Love seeing everybody. Okay. Look at that. Get that. I'm a little nervous. No. What? Whatever. Get out of here. Okay, welcome. No, thanks for joining us, everybody.
Okay, I'm PK. Nice to meet you.
Making friends. I love it. No, that's okay. That's okay. Thanks for coming. So, today we have a schedule from 11:30 to 12:30. Now, mind you, this is a class that in the fourth quarter of last year I taught, and we ended up taking 3 one-hour sessions to go through everything. So we're gonna do something I call water ski today, but we scuba dived before. We're gonna get this class on the calendar every month because of what's happening in the industry, okay? And we'll scuba dive on different parts. Today, we're gonna scuba dive on a specific part. So let me give you an overview of what we're gonna talk about today. So making sure you're in the right room. Today is all about buyer consultations and partnering with buyers. And actually, I'm gonna invite. I'm gonna invite my partner Laura Helker up to join me. Come on up, Laura. So we've got some new faces in the room, some folks I don't recognize. So just a quick introduction. My name is Susan Glenns. I'm the broker here at AW Gateway. Laura Helker is one of our top agents and ALC members as well at Gateway. So welcome. And the majority of your business is working with buyers, right? What would you say your business split is?
Probably 80% buyers.
80% buyers. Okay, cool. So I invited Laura to teach this class with me today. It's going to be like a conversation. We're kind of going to have a podcast a little bit. Off the cuff, I have an agenda, but you're going to kind of hear us think out loud a little bit. And Laura, share with everyone why I felt like bringing you in specifically with your history with buyer consults.
Yep.
Was going to be a really good perspective for people.
So if any of you were at the stakeholder meeting last year, or last month, you know this a little bit. I've been in the business for 4 years, year 1, 2, and 3 and a half, a quarter. I did not do buyer consults. I would just meet an agent or meet a buyer in the woods, in the city, whatever, and did not really understand the true value of having a buyer consult until I took Susan's scuba dive class last year, and it was very eye-opening. Part of it was fear, just me doubting myself and my abilities and my experience, and she gave me a different perspective that it doesn't matter how much experience you have whatsoever. It's just in you giving the true value to your client and starting a partnership together. So it changed how I work with clients. I don't waste my time anymore. I don't meet strangers in the woods anymore. And it's really improved my personal feelings about myself as an agent. My business doubled this year, and I did not run around miles and miles of Livingston, Ontario, Wayne, and Monroe counties with people who are not serious buyers.
That deserves that. Doubled the business and got your time back.
Yes.
Love it.
And all of you can do the same thing.
Yes.
And you should, and you will.
Welcome back. Come on. So I guess we'll do a quick little backstory of why we're here and why we're focusing on this and why we're committed as a market center to have this class once a month for the next 12 months. And by the way, the best way to learn something is to teach it. So if anyone wants to teach it going forward, I promise you will learn more from teaching than you do from taking the class. But we are looking for volunteers. I'm sure Laura one day will teach it. Teresa, yes, do I have another? Do I even know? Yeah, okay, I've got volunteers to teach. So you're probably all aware from communications from either myself or Chuck and our stakeholders meetings and Inman News and everything that the real estate industry is under attack by what I will call bogus lawsuits, and yet they seem to be winning in court. We are KW and NAR were some of the first named because we have the deepest pockets, right? And that's where class action lawsuits go. They go to the deepest pockets first. Since then, there have been lawsuits against small brokers, indie brokers, teams in Texas, Florida, Pennsylvania, copycat lawsuits. I think that I'm not an attorney, so I don't know if this is technically true or not, but I think what we think as OPs is that all of those other lawsuits, they're gonna have to do what's called a stay meaning they can't actually issue a verdict until our appeal goes through, because if our appeal gets overturned, then all those other copycat lawsuits don't have a precedent, right? But anyways, all that to say, there's people after our commission and your commission and making what I say are bogus claims. However, there are ways to protect ourselves. Do I see sweeping changes in the industry right away? No, this will take years to work out. However, there is a best practice that has always been in place. And Laura, you alluded to the fact that you've been in business for 4 years, and for 3.5 years, you didn't follow that, right? No one, it just wasn't part of your cadence of your business. And I would say probably if I were to guess based on conversations with agents, including our own agents, I would say 90% of agents are probably in that same boat. Because I don't think as an industry, we do a good job of highlighting how important it is to partner with buyers like you partner with sellers. So if I said to you in here, who feels comfortable going and getting a seller to sign an exclusive right to represent contract? Raise your hand.
I feel comfortable now because of Laura.
You feel, no, it's
Oh,
seller.
seller.
Seller, okay, so it is normal in real estate, right, to sign a listing agreement. So much so that we as a brokerage require you to submit it, right? The board every time, once in a while, will audit for it and call up Chuck or I and say, hey, send us a listing packet on 123 Main Street. The board has never called me and asked me for an exclusive right to represent buyer agreement. We don't collect them as a brokerage. So you can see as an industry, it's not a standard. And I think that kind of has failed us a little bit. I took a class very early on when I started my career back in 2013. And that's how someone taught me. I don't even know who taught the class. I can't remember, but that's how someone taught me. And so literally my very first consult I did that year, I started with a consult and signed my buyer. And that's just how I grew up in the business doing it. So I can really speak with confidence. I've probably signed over 500 buyer listing agreements, 5 partnership agreements. And to me, it was just, that's just how we do it, right? So let me get a show of hands. Who in the room here has never signed a buyer before? Okay, awesome. Who in the room here is like on a scale of 1 to 10? Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. Maybe I'm like a 5, between a 4 and a 6. Okay, and who in the room here does it every single time? Okay, cool. So we've got a mix. So I'm assuming that the goal is to increase our skill or learn something brand new today, right? Okay. So let's start with, I kind of broke it down into 4 different categories. The first is why, securing a consult, delivering a consult, gaining commitment. We're gonna spend, I would say, the first half hour on these 3 today, and then the last half hour on gaining commitment, because this is all about signing the buyer partnership agreement. How do I talk to my client about commission? So let's start with why. We're gonna unpack this a little bit. Why is signing a buyer and having a consult, why is that important?
We get to know how committed they are to actually buying.
Yeah,
Like, are they serious? Are they a 10 or are they 4? Not thinking about it.
measure commitment, yeah.
Well,
I love
also,
that.
they really can't technically go work with another agent. They're under contract with you.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that a little bit, as far as, I love that, Cheryl, how do you present, are they committed to us? Can they break their contract with us? What does that look like?
So this is pretty far into the whole thing,
Yeah.
when I go over the partnership agreement with them. But I tell them, I try to bring a little humor into it, because it's formal, we're on Zoom or face to face. I just tell them, look, we're dating, it's not a marriage. That usually gets a chuckle, which kind of just breaks the tension. I tell them if at any point either of us, because I make it clear it's a two-way street here. If at any point either of us are not feeling that this is working, I would really appreciate a conversation. I'd like to have a conversation. If not, shoot me an email, shoot my team an email, shoot Bob an email. Someone, if it gets so bad, which I can't ever anticipate it being like that, but if you never know what someone else is feeling. I say, if at any point this just isn't working for us, let's have a conversation and we'll break the partnership. But we can't just run off, cheat on each other. I just making sure they understand that it's a partnership between the two of us and we expect open communication through the whole transaction. It just sets the groundwork for transparency and it's, I've never had anyone break up with me.
Yeah, but to that point, Cheryl, if you come to the table with an expectation that we're committed to each other, right? And then if someone's not delivering, we can have a conversation and break up, but it. Hopefully, before they cheat on you and go to an open house and sign with another buyer, they're thinking about, well, wait, I made a commitment to Laura, right? Or I made a commitment to Kim, right? Beth,
You hear that these really aren't always binding, I guess, if, you know, the chain of, was it,
I know what you're looking for, procuring costs, that word, is that what you're looking for, yeah. So, here's the thing. It's we have won situations where there was an issue of, a buyer that went to another agent and we won the commission because we had assigned a buyer rep. There are nuances and it depends on what happened and did that agent know about it or not, right? Because if the buyer was deceitful, then the broker may not have known, and then the broker can take the buyer to court to try to get commission. But in this case, the broker was aware and we could present the buyer partnership agreement and the board voted in our favor. So there's been cases, it's nuanced, but what I would say is without that paperwork, there's zero chance that it could be upheld, right? So I think it's like anything.
another thing that I really like about it is that there's important clauses in there that I think we should be disclosures, like the fact that you may have another buyer, but you can say, like, I think that's important, and that you might not, if you're not using that form, you might never mention that.
Yeah, right, yes, thank you. And we'll get to we're gonna dive into the form in front of you. Does everyone have a copy of the form in front of you? Okay, cool, we're gonna get to that in a second. You'll notice it looks a little bit different than the board form, but we'll table that. Okay, so why not? Let's have this conversation, Laura. Why not? Why do you think, or tell me from your perspective, why did you not have a consult in the beginning?
I didn't because, well, I started right at the beginning of COVID. So I got my license, quit my full-time job and started March 2020, which was a really horrible time.
Literally, I think the shutdown was March 24th.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I had a. And so we had less in-person classes, so I just came in right at a time where things were a little weird. And I just found as I got buyers, nothing was going normal. We weren't showing houses the same way that we normally did. We were writing contracts sight unseen. Just things were a little weird, and so I just fell into the habit of just meet a buyer at a house. And thought, heck, I did $1 million my first year. I thought that was great. And never had a single person sign.
Nothing's broken, why fix it?
Right, so
Right.
why do I need to? I didn't think I needed to. And I heard of agents, Rumella would tell someone, well, we're not working together if you don't sign one. I don't know if you know Rumella, but she's an agent at our office. And I thought, she's crazy. Like, I can't believe she would let clients go if they wouldn't sign that. And my mindset was just wrong. My mindset was wrong and I had limiting beliefs, you know, as we say in KW a lot, around my ability to have a consult and prove my worth with a buyer before we started working together. That was really what it boiled down to. I was
Well,
afraid.
and I wanna just change the language there, because I don't think your mindset was wrong. So if there's someone in the room that, you're struggling with this and saying, well, I'm not fully bought in yet to this is what I need to do. Maybe I've been doing it a certain way for a long time and I hear what you're saying, Susan and Laura, but I'm not fully bought in, like prove it to me, right? If that's your perspective. I wanna make sure you know that's not a wrong perspective, it's a perspective. The question that you should be asking yourself is it an effective mindset? How will that continue to serve you if, especially, all of a sudden, the cooperating commission changes? And you believe that you're worth what you want to charge, okay? Now, do we have folks, non-KW folks in the room? We do, okay. Then we're not gonna talk commission because We don't do that across brokerages, okay? Yeah, okay. So, and anything I use will be an example in this conversation. This is being recorded, so get that, to the court. Chris, you have a question in the
Yeah,
back?
what did change your perspective?
So I should say that my perspective changed before I was on Susan's team, so she had influence, but not, it wasn't like we're
Do this,
teammates,
yeah.
this is our standard practice. So I just wanted to, preface it with that. What changed was I took the class with her. I was struggling with a buyer who was afraid to commit. They said, well, what if I want to talk to other agents at the same time as you? And I didn't know how to address that. I was like, I don't really know what to say. And perfect timing, she had the class, I sat down, I listened, and it blew my mind. And so it gave me some tools to go back into that conversation with that client and stand my ground. And that just cracked the door for me. Then she had class 2 and class 3, and at the end I was like, oh, I got
I'm a
this.
new woman.
I got this. And please know that you can be a successful agent without one, but you will waste your time. You will not make as much money because you're wasting time that you could be working with a serious buyer. It's just, you're gonna take it to a different level once you put this into practice.
So Laura, what was your answer to that buyer?
So I told them I wanted them to sign the partnership agreement with me, and they said, well, we don't really want to. We want to be able to use other agents. Why won't you just do what we want? And I was taken aback, but I said, this is my standard. They didn't know that it wasn't my standard prior to an hour ago. I said, this is my business standard, that I sign this partnership agreement with my partners in buying. And if I'm willing to back down because you don't want me to, how do you know I'm gonna stand up for you when it's time to negotiate a deal?
Love
And they were like, oh,
Fair.
okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So that was, I was like, who is this?
But something changed. I think what I'm hearing is that, and what I saw is that something changed in Laura. We experience the world in 2 dimensions, inner and outer. It has to change inside you first, or you walk into that appointment or that Zoom consult with the conviction that you have value to bring. There's value in partnering with you. You are worth every penny of your commission, and why would someone not want to partner with you? Gloria?
I was just gonna say that presenting the agreement during a buyer consult is also when you get to set your boundaries and your expectations, and you get to say, like, I'm not answering phone calls after 8 o'clock. And really letting them know, this is how I work. And basically, if I'm giving up time to my family, I'm spending my gas money, explaining to a lot of people who don't know, I don't get paid hourly, I don't get a salary, I don't get paid until I've done my job and you've bought a house.
Yeah.
So my time is valuable. You outline all of that when you go through it with them.
Right. I'm gonna add one more, PK.
I was gonna add, when I have them signed, I'm like, if we have loyalty to each other and we're dating or whatever, then I will help find any off-market property, or I will go above and beyond. There's not anything on the MLS, but we don't have this partnership, then it's hard for me to spend all this extra time, sifting through off-market properties or whatever for you. So that's, again, another way you're adding value is
Yeah.
by saying, this is what I'm gonna continue to do for you as long as we are in this committed partnership.
Yeah, all about the value. And I think that part of this, what's happening with the commission's lawsuits, right, is if the unfortunate thing happens and commissions are now paid by the buyer. First of all, I think that'll hurt the buyer, right? The buyer already has a lot of costs, and it'll certainly hurt cash for first-time buyers. But if it does, I think we need to go into the future with the mindset that the buyer is paying the commission and the seller is just offsetting it if the listing broker, is willing to share a commission. And so what is the value I'm bringing, right? PK just brought in one example of looking for off-market properties, and make sure you know your worth. The other piece about a mindset thing is, I don't know, for whatever reason, we have not attached that value to this industry. So if I were to ask you, how many of you know an attorney that would be willing to take on your case, whatever it is, right? Without a retainer or without some type of a commitment? You do?
Oh, here, is he any good though?
I know.
Are you married to him?
Even, I don't know if you knew this, but even attorneys that take, like our closing attorneys, right, that we refer our buyers and sellers to, have their clients sign an engagement letter before they're officially their attorney, right? So attorneys know, right, we know that if we sit with an attorney and they ask us to sign a commitment, okay, that's standard practice, right? The consumer, as a consumer, we have no question. And yet I think the biggest reason people don't is there's a fear that that buyer won't sign it and won't commit. And all the buyer is there to do is to meet with you and have you show them the path. This is just one piece of the path. So there, how many times have you gotten an objection outside of that one that like was kicked off your career? Since then, how many times have you gotten objections?
I have had one, I had one person who found another agent because they didn't want to sign a contract. We did negotiate it a little bit, mine is typically a year long. And I had gone down, I said, well, okay, we'll start with 3 months. I do currently have a client who's at 3 months, who signed a 3-month. Okay. And I know I can prove myself in 3 months, fine. So I
Which, by the way,
went
we do that on listing contracts, right? I know I used to do 6-month contracts exclusively and then the market shifted and I sell my houses in 7 days. So now I do 3-month contracts, right? But that could change again. Yeah.
So I did have one person who refused, they didn't want to sign it, they weren't comfortable, and they found another agent. And that.
But it's the exception, not the rule,
No,
generally.
and everyone else has signed.
And I found, even if they sign and have this conversation of like, if we're not the right fit, whatever, they will get back to you and they will have a conversation of like, this is how I'm not feeling comfortable. This happened to me before and I said, you know what? Thank you so much. I'm so glad it came to me. I have an agent for you that is amazing. And if I didn't have the time for this, whatever, and she felt like I was not servicing her in a way that she needed, I will find someone who will give you all the attention. And then I introduce them to the relationship, so you're still engaged, you're still involved, and then you can do a referral fee or whatever the case may be, so you still keep them in your circle. And you know that they're gonna be taken care of as opposed to them just going off finding some other agent at an open house or whatever, so.
Yeah,
You're eliciting this conversation of trust and understanding.
love that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Okay, so for the sake of time, we're gonna move on, but we could go real deep on this because again, it starts inside. You have to really walk into that appointment knowing and believing your value and being able to step up and have that conversation without fear. Securing the consult. Okay, so before we dive into this, I usually like to define what a consult is, and it may look different to you. Okay, so we're gonna talk best practice, our experience. It's your business, so you decide what it looks like to you. But wanna make sure we're not like putting everybody in a box, right? But I bring this up because, I've heard agents sometimes say, well, I just had a consult with a client. And it was like a 10-minute phone call, and they called that a consult. And maybe to them, that's a consult and they got value out of it. I'm gonna talk today about what we define as a consult that goes really deep, because if we're really gonna ask someone to pay us our commission, I wanna make sure I'm establishing a lot of value inside of that. So I set it up as 2. We've got securing the consult is kind of that initial phone call, right? Maybe they're an inbound lead or someone referred them to you, so you're making that initial hello call. That initial call, discovery call, I think Kathleen called it at our meeting the other day, right? Is you're digging to find where they are in the journey. Is this someone that's 18 months out? Is this someone that needs to buy a home in the next couple of weeks, or they're gonna be homeless? You're assessing motivation on that call. You're assessing, are they cash or financing? Do they have financing? Do they need to be connected to a lender? How can you first step in and help them? And are they ready for an actual consult? Because you're only taking certain people through to a consult. Make sense? Anything to add to that? No. Okay, so think of it as a 2-step process. And the reason is that on that call, I want to set the expectation for what a consult is. Okay, so I'll say, my clients have found it. Well, first of all, I find out, okay, they're cash, they've got proof of funds, and they're ready to go. Okay, this person is ready and they have strong motivation. I can take them right to the consult phase. Okay, so here's where most of my clients find incredible value, or here's where my clients find incredible value. The next step is we would meet for a home buying consultation. And it takes about 45 to 60 minutes. And we're gonna meet over Zoom, so you can be in the comfort of your home or your office, whichever you prefer. And these are the 3 things we're gonna cover. So I'm future pacing them on this call about the value they're gonna get on this consult. Okay, so these are the 3 things that we're gonna cover and the 3 things that my clients have found helpful. Number 1, we're gonna go through the entire home buying process, A to Z. So that you understand what comes next and you always feel empowered along the way. Number 2, we're gonna go through your needs and wants and really take a deep dive on what you're looking for so that I can come alongside you as a partner and I know exactly what you need, okay? And then number 3, we're gonna go through, and usually I do it in a different order. Number 3, we're gonna go through the state of the real estate market today. We're gonna talk about what's happening in the market that you are about to buy in. And what are the tools and strategies that I have as an agent to help you win in this market? How does that sound? Does that sound like that would benefit you? Ask them a question to get them to yes, because it will benefit them. Yeah.
Do you feel that at that point, given the current status and what's in the news and that's the point at which where they're going to ask about these lawsuits and that sort of thing? Is that what you?
Typically on this call, no, because we're not getting that deep. I'm setting the stage for the things we're gonna talk about. They might ask in a consult. Have you had anyone ask yet? No, I have, but they might. I don't think it would happen on that call.
Okay.
Because I'm not even talking about commission or my rate or my fee or anything on this call. I'm talking about how can I show up? What is the next best step along their journey and how the value I'll deliver in this. I'm selling the conversation. Because some buyers, I just want to see the house, right? I just want to see the house, right? I don't have time for that. I'm setting the stage for why it's important that they invest an hour with me. And then, all right, great, let's look at our calendars and set the appointment, okay? So the appointment itself, I used to meet in person at the office. Everybody would come to me and then COVID hit. And I have done 100% of my consultations or my team, right? Has done 100% of their consultations on Zoom. I think maybe met a person.
I've met one. ever.
One in person.
Ever.
Whatever, okay. It's just kind of the way of the world, you know, they use Zoom and work and they're comfortable doing Zoom and saves on travel. And in the winter, they're not slushing to the office in boots and getting the kids packed up. It's just a lot easier. So on that phone call, we're setting the consult and then let's talk about what we're doing inside the consult. So I just kind of gave my spiel. Laura, what's your spiel for what you're covering in a consult?
Same 3 things. I'm gonna do a deep dive on your wants and needs, so I know exactly what you want and exactly what you can afford. And we're gonna go top to bottom with the process, so we know from today through closing, what to expect. And then the market. State of the market right now, what to expect. A lot of these people have never purchased, or it's been a while. Most people have not purchased a house in this market.
Yeah.
So they don't know that they don't know it.
So if they're not already pre-approved before, and you're getting them a lender in the step 1 phone call. Will you not meet with them to the next step unless they're already pre-approved, so you know
Great
what they can afford?
Yes, if they haven't met with a lender, I will tell them that I'll send them 3 or 4 via email. I do that immediately. Follow up with them via text to make sure they don't have any questions. Some people like to have a group text, introduction. Do you want that? Sure, we'll introduce and then the ball gets rolling. They understand that we're not having the consult until we know what their buying power is, because it's pointless. How are we gonna talk about houses when I don't know if you can afford 100 or 500,000?
Yeah.
And we make sure they do that right away, especially if they have a house they have their eye on. Like, get it done.
Yeah. The only thing I'll add to that, Chris, is I'm going to ask some questions on this initial call for me to get a sense of their viability as a buyer. I'm not a loan officer, right? But I will literally say to them, if they're not pre-approved and they need financing, I'll say, you know, I can definitely give you some recommendations. You know, I'm not a loan officer, but would it be helpful for you if I just asked you some high level questions right now to help give you an idea of whether you might qualify or not? And typically they say yes, so then I'll dive into some questions, and we can go through those questions real quick, but what I want to encourage you to do is to take some ownership of the fact that you have some tools in your tool belt to be able to assess that without just passing them off to a loan officer. I think that it's really easy to just say the loan officer will give me that information. I want to empower you to be able to understand, okay, what are the kinds of questions that I need to ask, that I should know? How can I assess what they can afford from a monthly payment? Because to answer your first question, if I can get enough of an assessment to say, I'm sitting with someone that has a lot of cash, a strong job, W-2, they've been employed in the same position for 5 years, they've got a healthy budget, and they don't have a lot of debt and a high credit, like I can assess that in that conversation. I'm scheduling the consult in parallel with the pre-approval because I'm so confident they're gonna get pre-approved. Why? Because I don't want to have anyone else creep in between the time that I'm on that call, they get pre-approved, right? Because they could go into open house and meet another agent and I'm cut out of it.
That's the same thing, like if they already have if you're talking to them on an initial call and they already have addresses that they like. And you see things that might not qualify for certain loans, you kind of educate them on that too before they talk to the lender. So those are kind of some things that you kind of do.
Yes, yeah. You know, I know enough about the area they're looking, if it qualifies for USDA, if they say they don't have a lot of money and they need, 100% financing or whatnot. So make sure you're educating yourself on that so you can carry on a conversation to understand if it's worth investing some time and taking a risk, or if no, I really need to get them that pre-approved before I meet with them. You'll generally know. Okay, delivering a consult, we talked about the high level of what's the value we're establishing. Is this clock broken?
Yeah, it's not 1:30.
It's been the same.
Yeah.
It is now 1:30?
No, it's not.
Oh, okay, I like rushed it, thinking, oh my gosh, what the hell? Where did the time go?
12:04.
Okay, but we got a half hour. Okay, so we are gonna pivot though. We've got 25 minutes. We are gonna pivot. And then we'll talk about what the future classes look like, because I just love to deep dive on this stuff. So, in delivering the consult, Laura already set us up that we're starting with their needs and wants. I typically start there because I want to get them talking first, right? It's a good meeting. When you look at two people in a conversation, whoever had the best experience is the one that talked the most, right? Which is why today I'm gonna have the best experience because but you want to get them talking first. It gets them feeling comfortable and it helps you understand where they're at. So we typically start with needs and wants and budget, right? Then we'll dive into the state of the current real estate market and process, or do you do it the other way around?
I do the state last.
The state of the market last,
Mhm.
okay, got it, okay. So you're identifying, and again, that's why you can figure out what works for you, just make sure you're hitting the points. Is there anything else, I should pause for a second, is there anything else that for those of you that are doing consults that you add that doesn't fall into one of those 3 buckets, that's an item of value or a conversation of value? Gloria?
What I was saying earlier, just some of my expectations and boundaries and explaining to them, when you work with me, here's what to expect.
Yes.
And, that's where I tell them, if you text me and I haven't responded within 5 hours, please text me again. So I'll probably be like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Forgot to text you back.
Great
Stuff like
point,
that.
and yeah, we do cover that under the gaining commitment section, but I love that that could probably be a whole separate section of setting expectations, right? And understanding what their expectations are, yeah, that's huge. So, anything else to add? Okay, so let's talk about gaining commitment. First of all, you all have in front of you a 1-pager buyer partnership agreement. Does it say buyer partnership agreement at the top?
Yes.
Okay, that's my language. So just so you know, full transparency, this is a document that we use on bespoke homes. We used to use on SGT. I got it from a KW agent years ago who basically took the 2-pager that the board has and whittled it down to the most important pieces because it's a lot. Now, we have sellers sign 4 or 5-page documents, right? So having a buyer sign a 2-page document is not a big deal. I just, as a new agent, really liked a 1-pager and walking them through it, so I used this. I will say that, I'm not Chuck Hilbert, so for those of you from the Greater Rochester Market Center, we use it, but he's never collected it from me, right? I'm comfortable using it as a broker at Gateway, but you would wanna check with Chuck to make sure, you know, he's okay with that. As far as what you find if you go into Authentisign or Instinet, it's a 2-pager that the board has, okay? Brokers are allowed to have their own forms. It's mostly the same stuff. Like I said, we just condensed it. So, you know, for KW Gateway agents, feel free to use this. Morgan is working with Bob to get it uploaded to our internet, so it is available to you. And so we're gonna talk through this form, but let's first, Laura, role play how, so we're at the end of a consultation, and let's talk about how we pivot into the gaining of the commitment.
Susan, thanks so much for spending the last 45 minutes with me. I'm so excited. We do talk about, we tell them what we're gonna tell them, then we tell them, and then we tell them again.
Yeah.
So now that we've
You know
got,
what we mean by that? You bookend, right? Set the expectation, give them all the goods, and then remind them what you just talked about. Yeah, okay.
so we've talked about your wants and needs, we've talked about the state of the market, and you know how the process is gonna go from start to finish. So there's one last thing I wanted, just to bookend the rest of our consult. I wanna talk about some paperwork that we're gonna sign together.
Okay.
Then I go over the lead form, the fair housing and agency, go over all those. And the last one is our buyer partnership agreement. So our team standard, my business standard, my team standard, because I've also talked about my team. And if you're a solo agent, Gateway is your team. We're all your team here. We have a buyer partnership agreement that I'd like to discuss with you, solidifying our relationship together. How did you want me to go into this?
Yeah, I will keep going. Pretend that everyone in the room is a client, right?
All right.
Hearing it for the first time.
I usually have this in front of me and them, so I'm kind of reading
But
it.
she'll share her
Yes.
screen on Zoom.
Yep.
Right, to show. And by the way, she's sharing her screen on Zoom for the lead, the fair housing, the agency, and saying, we are going to send this to you electronically after this call to sign. However, let me walk you through what you're gonna be signing, and she'll explain what each of the fiduciary duties are, right, and really slow down. We're not gonna slow down on that today, we're gonna slow down on this today, there, okay.
So my obligations as your agent is to use diligence in finding property for you, acceptable to you with the terms that you need. Use all my knowledge and skills and negotiate for you. I'm not going to go outside the scope of my knowledge, please understand that. If you ask me a legal question, I'm gonna direct you to your attorney. If you ask me a structural engineering question, we're gonna talk to a contractor or engineer. Because I can't go outside of the scope of my expertise, and that's not it. In return, I expect you to use me as your only agent. I'm gonna spend a lot of time, energy, negotiating, phone calls, driving, time together with you. On behalf of you, for nothing, you don't have to say that, but that's what it is. Until you secure your home, and I expect in return that I'm the only agent that you're partnering with.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Okay, that sounds good. Literally, that's how it goes, okay, keep going.
Compensation, you can read this part. Do you not want me to talk about this part?
Well, you
Compensation.
can talk about it, just say 0%, that way we're not
Okay.
getting into any.
Okay.
issues.
So I get paid typically by the listing broker at X%.
X.
X%.
Thank you. X%.
I don't work for zero. And thank you. And typically I'm paid by the listing broker. There are occasions that bend that rule. For sale by owners, for example, we may come across a for sale by owner where they don't want to pay. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask them to. If they say no, we'll try to split it. We'll try to split the compensation. And worst case scenario, they say no, and you really love this house. So that's gonna fall on you because I can't work for free. And I know you wouldn't expect that out of me. So. Any questions around that?
No, we're gonna pause there for a second, because what I would recommend making a small modification to in the future is rather than lead with, because the way the industry has been, right? Typically, my fee is paid by the listing broker. Typically, the listing broker shares their commission with me. If that starts to change more, then that we can't say typically, right? So what I would establish is, this is the part where we talk about my fee. Right? My fee for these services that we've talked about today is X%. Okay? And when we look at properties, I will show you for each property we look at, how much a listing broker is willing to compensate me. Because very oftentimes the listing broker is willing to compensate me in full and it covers my fee. But if they're not willing to, I will let you know walking into that showing so that you know what your additional cost would be for that property, okay? So this is where you should be printing out the MLS or at least taking a note of it, and before you walk into the house or show it to them, whatever your system is, you're letting them know what the cooperating commission is. Because you've already established that your commission is X. So if the cooperating commission is Y, they can make it, they know what that looks like, okay? And we'll talk about objections to that in a second, but does that make sense, Laura? Like, do you think that
Yes.
tweak is valid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is why these are so good, because it doesn't matter how you do it, Susan does it. So I'm like always learning and tweaking, because I'm like, oh yeah, I can say that. But say it however you need to say it until you get it as perfect as Susan.
I don't think I could say what I just said again, by the way. So,
This is almost a tiny bit different every time, and this is, I'm usually not in front of like 20 people.
you're doing great. So good.
So. Where was I?
You were at the part you're talking about for sale by owners.
Yes, for sale by owners and or if a listing is at a less percentage than X, if it's W percentage. Then there are ways for us to approach that. We can sometimes roll it into your commissions.
Closing costs.
Closing costs, that's what I meant. Your closing costs, you know, we can navigate this on a case by case basis. And to be honest, it doesn't happen very often. I don't know that I've ever had.
Yeah, so we are gonna have that conversation. We're gonna table that and have that conversation, but let's finish going through the form, and then we're gonna talk about what happens if I show a house that's offering Y and I'm charging X. What are my options?
Outside matters outside of the scope, I kind of talked about that already. Fair housing, we've already talked about that. Property listed with broker. So if you become interested in acquiring a property that I've listed, then we're gonna talk about this. I can't be loyal to both a buyer and a seller equally. So if you happen to love a house that I have listed, chances are I'll probably refer it to another agent on my team so that you have a fair shot. I mean, it's kind of a weird one because it's so broad and different
Yeah.
ways this can go. And I don't always dig very deep into this. But I let my buyers know that there's a chance we may have another KW agent selling a house, or a KW agent that I work
Or
with on
a
a
listing
team.
that our team has, right?
Right, or a listing that's mine, and usually because I don't list that many houses, it doesn't happen. But know that I will work for you as your buyer's agent and be loyal to you and keep your information confidential and stay in my own lane. So if Susan's house is listed and we're on the same team, we're not working in cahoots together, we're working individually for our respective clients.
Yeah, it's just that at that point, and remember when we talked about agency earlier, because we've gone over agency at this point. We talked about dual agency and dual agency with designated sales agents. That would kick in and I would let you know before we go see the property, how agency may change, and you can decide at that point if you want to make a change. This form literally verbatim walks you through what their options are. So if you look at the bottom, under property listed with broker, 1, 2, 3, right? So if you become interested in acquiring a property which the broker has listed, these are your options, right? So we walk them through what those are. It's pretty self-explanatory. Kate, too.
And maybe we can't go into this now, but I'm just curious with the changes in the industry. I know there's always been questions about dual agency, but due to what's going on, do you feel as if it is a better idea to not do dual agency at this point?
Well, I've never been a big fan of dual agency myself. I think I've done it less than a handful of times in my career. How do I think it could have, I don't know, that's a really good question. I don't know that it impacts, I have to think about it a little bit more.
Cause it's considered by some to be dicey. There are some states that don't allow it at all.
Yeah,
I've used it
yeah,
in my other brokerage where I was before. It was done all the time, but just really clear.
yeah,
Yeah, and literally in writing that I will have a fiduciary responsibility to you, Mr. Buyer, and to you, Mr.
Well, that's
Seller.
in this agency disclosure.
Right,
Right,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know that it changes anything, with agency per se, I'll think about that a little bit more. I just don't love dual agency to begin with, so it doesn't make me love it more.
I also think a lot of people on teams don't understand that within a team, that is dual agency.
Yes.
It's not designated sales.
Yeah,
Right.
It is, yep, and we share with our clients, well, if a buyer's agent on our team is sharing, they'll say, because Susan leads the team, right? Ultimately, we all work under the team with Susan, and so we're considered dual agent, yeah. Yeah, but what we also say is Chelsea knows information about the seller, I know information about, we're not talking to each other about it. So in my mind, it's really more like dual designated, because I'm not getting in the middle, but New York State says it's dual, so we have to say it's dual, yeah. But when I'm talking about dual, like true dual, like one person running both sides, I don't love that. I've done it, I don't love it.
Same, it's dicey and
Yeah,
it's difficult. So
so let's pause for a second. Questions on what you just heard about presenting your commission fee to a buyer?
I feel like at this point, you've had an hour, 45 minutes or an hour conversation. They understand you, you understand them, the trust has been established already. And so I very rarely have any questions around this. They're just like, okay, that makes sense. Okay, sounds good. All right, yep, I'll sign. Thank you.
That's really important. We're narrowing in on this, but we didn't have the 45 minutes of value that we just delivered to the buyer before this.
When I taught this a couple of weeks ago, and we're using the one that's on
The 2-pager.
board, yeah. Have you seen people actually using the hourly fee or a flat fee that gets applied to their good faith deposit or anything like that?
I have not, I have not personally done it. I'm not saying that it hasn't been done. I just haven't personally done it. Yeah, or seen it done.
So that, would that be upfront? Would you say I get my flat fee for this? For
Yeah,
this
it's-
$3,000, let's say, right?
Yeah, if you look on the form, it'll say it.
Right.
Well, and I think there's
Would
an
you take
option on
that?
this one
Would you take that?
of a flat fee, but we
I would say, okay, you're gonna make a deposit of X, but 3,000 of that goes to me. Is that how you would do it?
Well, no, if you read the verbiage on it, it's saying that they pay a flat fee up front, which to me solidifies that they're committed to working with you because they gave you $2,000 and it's being held in escrow at your broker's
Retainer,
office.
okay.
And it's a
I like
retainer and it gets credited to whatever their good faith deposit is.
Okay, yeah. Listen, if they're willing to put money down up front, like they would be on an escrow on a home, that shows you major commitment. But yeah, to answer your question, I've not done that. I'm not saying you can't, just
And
saying I
then
haven't.
they also have the field for I collect an hourly rate and that will also be credited. But somebody asked during the class, like, well, what would the hourly rate be? And I was like, I have no idea.
Also, I'm not, like, there's a reason I didn't go into public accounting. I don't wanna do my billables and, right? So I don't wanna keep track of that. So that's why I eliminated that option on here.
Yeah.
But just know there is that option on the other form.
Can we dive into that? Cause in a buyer's agent, I've never talked about my commission because I never give like a number to it. I never said I'm getting X% or that's my standard. I just never talked about it. So this compensation, that whole 1 through 3 is so novel to me.
Okay, yeah. So 1, 2, 3 under compensation
Yeah.
section.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
never heard of the hourly and I've never heard of a flat fee.
Yeah, okay, so, before we dive into that, there was a couple times it was said today that I just want to use a pause to get us to retrain our habits. I might have said it, I think Laura said it, PK, you just said it, the word standard.
Yeah.
I want us to get rid of that word, we have standards in business. But when it comes to standard commission, we don't teach that, we don't say that, there is no standard commission. As a brokerage, I'm allowed to tell you all what KW Gateway, what our fee is and set that. What standard implies cahoots among other brokerages.
Can I say I personally have a standard or can I not? I don't know if I just said that. Did I say that?
Forget the context that you said it
Okay.
in.
I guess I've never given a number of like, this is my expectation of my percentage. I just always.
I would leave it at, this is my fee. this is my broker's fee, this is my brokerage fee.
And I can give a percentage to that?
Based on what Chuck says, yes,
Okay.
yes. Chuck will have a brokerage commission for that.
Okay.
And I would talk about it, but we have other people, yeah.
So. if I'm on Jerry board and we were talking about these commissions and this whole thing
Yeah,
all the time. And I think we're gonna be seeing a lot more things like retainers or flat fees or things like that, and that's actually good because we want to be. It's the competition is good. That's the way, that's what's legal and it's less price fixing, which is what this whole thing was about in the first place. So
yeah,
so we believe that we're gonna be seeing more of that. Go
yes.
on.
And I would say that I don't think there's been any price fixing. What I would say is, you go to the store, you buy a loaf of bread, you don't pay per slice, you pay for the loaf of bread. That's kind of been an adopted industry norm. This is how we price bread, right? An adopted industry norm in real estate has been a percentage of commission. And I think you're just saying that bringing in different different options helps support the very valid case that there is no price fixing happening,
And
right?
we've seen it.
Just
with
that
discount
Wegmans
brokerages.
charges, we see discount
Yeah,
brokerages,
so
right?
we know that there hasn't been.
We know that there hasn't been,
But-
but the public is very confused apparently by it. But like Wegmans, Tops, they all charge for a loaf of bread, right? Okay, so I'll leave it at that. Okay, PK, you wanted to get into the compensation piece, right? I wanna go back real quick to the standard piece. There is no standard commission. If you're asked questions about commission in general, you can use the word average, like on average, I see this. On average, I see this in the marketplace, right? There's a way to pull that data, but it's not a standard, so I just wanna, correct that. Okay, so compensation. So, what you're gonna want to fill out is, with them, right? And also, guys, make sure that when you have these forms, super important, when you have these forms and you're saving them, we all have systems, we have admins that are helping us to, create these forms. You have it in Dropbox or Google Drive or your Authentisign, make sure it's blank, it is not pre-filled out. Because pre-filled out implies that there's no negotiation and that, it's price fixed and all of that, so it's blank. And you're having the conversation with the client about your fee and then you're sending it to them to sign. You gotta fill it out before you send it to them to sign, but wherever you have it stored, make sure it's not pre-filled out. I know that it saves you time, right, to have something pre-filled out, it saves you time, but just, it'll protect yourself, okay? Alright, so, the first section, let's just read it, because sometimes, how many of you have read a purchase contract or a listing agreement verbatim, word for word? Awesome. A lot of people haven't, right? I know as a new agent, I think it took me a little bit to actually read it word for word. So we're gonna read this word for word. So the client agrees to compensate the broker if the client or any other person acting on the client's behalf, right? This is where you can avoid a situation. Well, I was working with the mother and the daughter and so I signed paperwork with the daughter, but then the mother went and bought the house. Or, so that's, I think, that reason that's there to protect you. Buys, exchanges for, or obtains an option on any real property. The amount of the compensation shall be, number one, if the property is listed with a real estate company or licensee, broker will accept a fee equal to the fee offered to the cooperating agents, okay? But in any event, not less than X. This is where you define what your fee is, and you have to talk with your broker about, because they're not paying you the agent, they're paying the broker. See that in capital letters, broker, so you have to find out what your broker's fee is. Not any event, not less than X% of the purchase price of the property or flat fee of blank. Okay? If such fee or any portion thereof is paid by the listing broker, seller or seller's agent as a convenience of the transaction, then client will be credited by broker for the amount so paid. So it's basically saying, if I'm charging X% and the listing broker offers Y, you are responsible for Z, the delta, right? we'll get back to that. Number two, if the property is not listed with a real estate company or licensee, a fee of X% of the purchase price or a flat fee of X dollars will be paid. If such fee or any, and then it's same, I'm not gonna repeat that, right? And then number three, other compensation agreement where you could write in something else. So. PK, you wanna understand how to present this?
Well, I guess my question,
Yeah.
I now have to say my general fee is X%, like that's typical.
My fee,
My
just say my
my
fee is
fee is
X%, yep, my fee
that
to
is
represent
okay.
you.
But then, if like, but then the flat fee brings in like a whole nother form of negotiation, because they're like, if I don't wanna do this percent, I'd rather do a flat fee of this. Do we then base it off of their price point, or like, I guess, how does the flat fee work?
So first of all, you have to ask your broker if they accept a flat fee, okay? KW Gateway, we can talk about that offline, but, you would have to ask Chuck if he accepts a flat fee. I wish we were all KW Gateway, because I could easily tell you what I will and will not accept, but I can't. So, yeah, you gotta start there, right? Because it could just be that your broker's not willing to accept the flat fee and
Then
It
this
is
would be
what it is.
different. Then
Well,
that
you-
would be then this obviously wouldn't be presented to my client.
Correct.
Okay.
yeah, you wouldn't even, you would just say my fee is X% and move on, right? They can read it and certainly try to negotiate with you, right? And you may or may not be able to negotiate based on what Chuck allows you to do.
Gotcha.
Got it?
I think in the board form, it has whichever is greater, so if you were selling a $50,000 house. I, like, even if I had X% in one place, and then let's say it's a $10,000 house. I would have X dollars, a minimum dollars I would take.
Yeah.
It would be greater than whatever that
Yeah.
percentage of the
Yes.
$10,000 house would be, that's how it's
So-
supposed to be.
In this
Or-
other compensation section, in this other compensation section here, if you're working with a client that is, maybe they're buying land and it's $10,000, like sometimes you see even on land, that's a different compensation. Maybe it's not a percentage, but it is a flat fee that's offered. If you have a minimum fee or your broker has a minimum fee, you could certainly write that in here, some language in here.
And now we have to have these conversations, or we do not, like. I mean, you know what I mean, like,
So-
I've never had this, I now have to have these conversations because of everything that's changing.
So it has always been considered best practice. It's just that the industry, the board, brokers have not really pushed it or made it a standard. Evidenced by the fact that we don't collect it for our paperwork and for auditing and for compliance purposes, right? So I'm not saying that my agent have to have it. I don't think Chuck would say, I don't think there may be brokers out there that are saying they have to have it. What I think the industry in general is saying is, hey guys, this has always been best practice. We're gonna just bring this back to the forefront and remind you this is best practice. So we highly recommend you adopt this to protect yourself. If the industry changes, you're already there, right? Like my conversation with my team is, hey guys, if the industry changes, you guys are light years ahead because you've been doing this for years. You've made this a business practice for years. I just want to get everyone in this room light years ahead for if and when the industry changes, you'll be ready.
Not to throw another monkey wrench into this, but we can't.
Bad, you're killing
We
me.
can't have to have it because the SOPs right.
Right,
So.
Right.
Standard, we can't require this because if somebody refuses to sign it, we still have to work with them because that's the way the standard operating procedures are right now. That's what was chosen.
you have to, the brokerage may have to, work with them, not the agent.
That's true.
Yeah. The board is not telling me who to go meet and where.
It's just, it's the brokerage that
Yeah.
shows the standard operating procedure not required. That's
Understood.
because we don't wanna, because if you require it, sometimes you don't require it, then it looks like you're discriminating.
Yeah. I understand that the brokerage SOP is that we're not requiring pre-approval letters to go show a house. And I told Chuck that if there's someone that wants to see a house and I'm weirded out by it, I will give them to you, Chuck, and you can service them, because I'm not gonna risk my life.
He said that's okay.
It's his decision to find someone to serve, you know? So the brokerage itself will take care of that person. I'm not gonna put my life on the line if I feel like I'm, you know, could be in harm's way.
Which I'm glad if that's an option, I'm just,
Yeah.
with the testers, feel like I just hope that that's the case.
Yeah. So treat everyone the same, right? That's like, so if you treat everyone the same, you'll be fine.
Right, but if someone refuses to sign it. I can say that they.
Do you, my question would be, do you work with, do you make exceptions, or do you
Well,
only
right now,
work with
I'm
people
only
that
doing
sign?
by referral, so I don't feel scared, I haven't met with a buyer that I was uncomfortable with.
Okay, that's great.
There's an affidavit somewhere for if somebody refuses to sign an agency disclosure. You can
Yes.
sign an affidavit, and you
Right.
could write up your own affidavit for the buyer, you know, if you're gonna make signing an agent agreement an absolute, this is what I require. Somebody refuses to sign it, you can actually do an affidavit, the date, the time, who
Yeah,
it was.
you actually
they
should.
refused to sign,
Yeah,
because that way you can say, I presented it, they refused.
yeah.
Well, it's not. The issue is then do you still need to work with them? That's the.
Yeah.
Right.
I would have a conversation with Chuck. I'm saying I don't expect any of my agents to work with someone that they feel uncomfortable with from a safety standpoint, right? If there's red flags going off about, and we all know what red flags those can be, right? They wanna meet me at a vacant house, or they're being shady about their situation, and won't provide, proof of funds or whatever. Gotta get, if your spidey senses go up, get your broker involved. I'm not saying turn them away, get your broker involved, because the broker is obligated to service them. So get your broker involved.
Do you, I'm probably pretty sure your team does, but for the whole thing about do the same thing for every person, do you guys have like a predetermined set of questions you ask during that first phone consult, or that first substantive contact? And
Yeah.
a solid list of, we ask everybody the same questions during the consultation.
We don't ask everybody the same questions during the consultation. We ask the same general questions, but you know, you might have someone relocating from California versus someone that's a buy-sell, two totally different, sometimes the conversation goes in different ways based on that person's needs, so we curate the conversation based on their needs. But the dialogue for the securing the consult is the LP Mama, right? Has anyone heard of that acronym? LP Mama, and this is for another class.
We have a paper up there if you want to use it.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's right behind the red one, yep.
How? What's the word I'm looking for? How can we? So LP Mama. L stands for location, right? We want to understand what's the general location they're looking to understand. Do I even service that area? Do I have expertise in that area, or do I need to refer them? Second is price. What is their budget? What is their price range? I might assess if they're looking for a $300,000 house and they tell me their budget is $1,500 a month, then there's a disconnect, right? So I'm digging a little bit deeper there. What is their motivation? High sense of motivation, low, why do they want to move? Are they a tire kicker, or do they seriously want to make a move? Are they working with an agent? Are they already represented? Have they signed anything with that agent? Do they need a mortgage, or will they be buying with cash, right? Understanding that. And then lastly, go for the close, go for the appointment. So there are questions around each of these. This is the acronym that I keep in the back of my head to say, okay, have I answered all these questions that gets them to an appointment?
And one more question, this Teresa is the one who brought this one up. With buyer agency agreements, have you run into yet the attorneys that are having agents go out and show all these properties, and then the buyers call their attorney and their attorney writes the offer instead?
No.
Well, the
Why am I
attorney's,
not
the
surprised?
attorney's not showing the property, but the buyer is calling me as an example, and saying, and when I asked them. a
Are you the
question,
listing broker in that, agent in that case? So they're asking you?
in that particular case, and then I would say, are you working with another agent? And they said, well, my attorney's going to be representing me. So then my fiduciary duty is lied to my seller, of course, I
Right.
want to get any buyer into the property.
Right,
So you're forced, I felt, and I showed the property. But this is where attorneys, if they're, of course, a member of the board, are then stepping in and writing the offer and collecting the commission. So,
I would like to know who those attorneys are, because here's what, and we can have that conversation offline. I would use that lead opportunity as an opportunity to convert them to a buyer for myself or for my team. I don't like dual agency personally, but I would try to connect them to an agent on the team, because I think it's a great opportunity to kind of dig deep there and say, well, that's really interesting, you know, I'm just curious, do you think your attorney is looking out for your best interest by not physically being in the home with you?
I would think that would be a chain of command issue. So you broke the chain of command. If you're showing them is what made them want to buy the house.
Procuring costs.
Procure costs, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So if they're, I would try to assess how
Yeah.
committed they are to that attorney and see if I can convince them to work with, you know, you or an agent on your team, or refer them to another agent, but. If they are committed to that attorney and that's the way they wanna do it, I would say, okay, I'm gonna give your attorney a call and see if they can be present for the showing. I would want, because,
100%.
right?
And that's why you'll notice under private remarks on the MLS where it says MLS members only. So those are the agents who probably experienced this. And kind of focusing on the attorneys who are not a member of the MLS, which are also, not all attorneys, but some are making that attempt. So notice that now under the private remarks,
Well, and that's, it's interesting that they're putting it in the private remarks, because technically that's the spirit of cooperation of the MLS, is that
Well-
cooperating commission is only offered to members.
right, but
Yeah.
yes, have you seen it before now?
I haven't, no.
It's-
I've seen it.
Yeah.
So that's
Interesting.
my understanding from agents I spoke with, why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Is
Didn't you
because,
say there was an attorney who crossed out the name of the agent who wrote the offer?
yes, so,
Crossed out their name and put their own.
yes, so when the agent wrote the offer, so I was told that, she showed them the property. She wrote the offer, he crossed out where it says, you know, it was presented by, and put his own, and that's exactly what happened, end of story, so.
So if that happens again, let me know. I will have a conversation with that attorney.
But also what I think happened there, I think they negotiated it out, so she ended up getting, you know, both sides, like through the MLS, I don't know why that needed to be that way, I can't answer that question.
Okay.
And then, but he still got the commission.
Okay.
So he's getting commission, plus I don't know what he's negotiating with his clients, I can't say I know, but to me, that's.
Yeah,
You're telling, we're saying that he can't wear the hat of an attorney,
but you
legal,
can, I know,
but
I
they
know.
can wear both hats, so I'm
Gotta
kind of
love New York
confused.
State.
Kind of confused there a little bit.
Yeah, real quick, because we're over time, but I just wanted to mention that, if you have someone that says, okay, well, I can't afford your commission, right? You walk them through, what a closing statement might be, you walk them, generally, when we're doing, needs and wants and looking at their budget, we're making sure they understand their closing costs around that budget, right? Did your loan officer talk to you about closing costs? Yes, no, well, let's just go over it real quick. So let's say $200,000 budget, you're putting 10% down, that's 20,000, you're probably gonna have closing costs between 6 and 8, 1 year's taxes, homeowners insurance. You can do the math with them and say, like, this is what you're gonna need to bring to the closing table. Are you prepared and comfortable doing that? You gotta know, because you don't wanna write an offer and all of a sudden you realize they don't have the cash to come to closing. Well, I didn't know that, the loan officer didn't tell me. Not the loan officer's job to tell you, you gotta know that, right? So just make sure we're not relying on the loan officer too much. Yes, the loan officer's job, yes, it's the loan officer's job to do that, and it's our job to interrogate that too. But so if they say to you, well, I can't afford your fee, right? What you don't wanna do is cross this off and say, okay, well, I'll be zero, or we'll just cross that off. Because then you could be working for free, right? You could very well be out there working for free. They come across a property that they're not paying a commission. and you are obligated to write that offer and they're not paying you a commission. So you do need to put it, but you just need to handle that objection. So, okay, let's talk about what your options are then, right? Because we may very well find a home that my fee is paid in full by the listing broker and it's taken care of. Let's talk about what happens if my fee isn't covered by the listing broker. Maybe a portion of it isn't covered, right? We have options. You could always, number one, write into the purchase contract that the seller shall offer a concession for that amount, right? Or the seller shall pay X% commission. That could be a term. Might not work in a competitive market that we've been in. There's been some changes, right? How many of you have had a listing recently with only one offer? I know I have, yeah. So it could always be a concession to help cover other closing costs so that they can pay that closing cost. Make sense? I do know that lenders, Fannie and Freddie, they're talking about, okay, there's gonna be a trickle down effect. If all of a sudden buyers have to absorb a commission and the industry widely changes, that's gonna impact the real estate community, that's gonna impact bankers and lenders and buyers, right? Because all of a sudden it's that much more expensive, or they don't get the representation and they're buying a home without fiduciary. And neither of those are good options. So the lenders are talking about how can we make this a closing cost, right, that they can finance. So we may see changes there too, but just know that now you can modify a term and ask for concessions or ask the seller to cover your commission, just like you do under for sale by owner. Right? Just like you do under for sale by owner, you'll ask the seller to cover your commission.
Just real quick, I know we're working, but from a realtor's perspective, I wanna know what type of questions you ask your buyers regarding if, you wanna know if they will be pre-approved before you send them to a lender.
Got it. So that's like probably a 20-minute conversation.
It is?
Yeah, because you really, you go deep on understanding the cash that they have available, their credit, what they're, like, I even asked, like, if they have no idea about a monthly payment, okay, what are you paying in rent right now? Right, so we could have another class just on that.
Okay, well, sign me up for that.
We are over time. Last quick call for burning question. Okay, so we will do this every month. Cool, and keep mixing it up a little bit. So I hope that by the end of the year, if you look back on 2024 and say, how did I transform my business? I transformed my business by becoming even more diligent in my buyer partnerships, and I'm nailing it. That's what I hope for all of you. Thanks for your time, Laura.
Great.